Hey everybody, I'm back. It's been a while. Been working, had a few contracts, and now we're in between jobs, so I have a few days hopefully to put together a couple of videos. Today we're going to be talking about takt time, and it's a much bigger subject than a 10-minute video can explain, but let's get to the basics today. Let's try to understand what is this number and why it's important and why do I need it and why so early. You know, a lot of guys teach, hey, let's do the takt time as part of your future state design, but I think calculating and understanding a takt time to whatever extent possible early on can only be helpful. So stick with it. We'll see you in a bit. All right, takt time. Let's get into it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw up a definition onto the screen because a lot of times people just come here looking for an answer and a formula, and that's fine, you know. So there you see it. It's your available seconds by shift, sometimes by day, divided by the total quantity sold over that same time period. So it's like an average daily sales or an average shiftly sales. Again, in the denominator where you're dividing that into how many available seconds that you have. So what your answer is really a seconds per piece. That's what you're looking for. And it's a bigger number than just, okay, it's 4.6 seconds for the whole value stream. So what do we want to do with that number? So the intent of the takt time is going to be answering the question, hey, if I have the perfect customer base, so there's no variability, they have the perfect demand rate, and they're pulling 1 unit of production at a certain pace, whatever that is, what is that number and what does that look like? And why is that so important? Why does that help us? How can I use that number? Well, first of all, you can get a takt time and you can apply it to a whole value stream, but then you start to get into these problems, right? Where I get a lot of questions. Well, Craig, I got 7 processes in my value stream and the available time on this machine is only 1 shift. The available time on this machine has got to be 2 shifts because it runs much slower. So which one do I use? Am I going to use 1.5 shifts? And no, you don't get into all that. You may make some assumptions to calculate a takt time for your whole value stream. But ultimately, and we're going to get into this in subsequent videos, we're going to be looking at the pacemaker process, and we really want to understand the takt time at the pacemaker process. That said, even if it isn't going to be your pacemaker process, there is a value in understanding what your rate of sales demand is, if it was perfect, at each key process step. All right, so if you have a pre-assembly, a final assembly, and then a pack out, right? And the final assembly and test area is the most complicated one. You're really going to want to know, what is my takt time there versus what is my takt time at the pack out station, for instance, right? Because it's more valuable. Remember, it's answering the question, if my customer were to be perfect, what would I have to produce? It takes away the excuses of, oh, we can't because my customer only orders monthly, my customer has huge batches, my customer has huge demand variability due to all of the things we discussed in the previous 4 videos, right? Takt eliminates all of that and says, if you had a perfect customer, what would you need your machine to do? And let's set our sights and our design of our future state eventually on that, right? Because we don't want to necessarily look at our processes and say, all right, this process has to deal with all of this customer demand variability, so I want to design that process for that. Because in the end, what we're going to do is we're strategically going to locate inventory between processes at the end of our value stream in order to absorb that variability. So if that's the case, what do I need to do in order, or what is my bogey, so to speak? What is my target for each of my processes? And that target is takt time. That target of what an ideal customer would be for that product family that you're looking at in that value stream, that takt time is that target. And you want to subordinate your design or understand your process from that perspective, right? So why are takt times different? If we only have one customer and they're buying at a certain pace, then wait a second, Craig, it doesn't make any sense. Why are they different throughout my value stream? And it's simply, again, if you look at the formula, it's about that available time. So changes in availability throughout your value stream are going to adjust your takt time. So your takt image at different processes, sometimes people call it a takt image, your takt time at each process, they're going to be potentially different, especially if this machine runs for 2 shifts, like I mentioned earlier. This machine's running 3 shifts, 5 days. Hey, this machine has so much scrap or so much rework that I have to run this machine 6 days a week, 3 shifts just to meet customer demand, right? So your takt time will vary per process not because your demand is changing. It could, I'll get to that in a second, but more because your available time per process step varies. But to the demand picture, like I just mentioned, it could be that within your value stream, even though we've picked, typically when you model a value stream, and especially if you read the books, right, everything works out so nicely. They select a product family. They're going to design a value stream around that product family, or they're going to map a current state value stream around that family. And then they pick a sample or a model part, and they'll track that through the whole value stream. That's textbook, absolutely the way that it needs to and should work. The reality, though, is things get a little messy, don't they? The reality is you try to do your value stream map and you're looking at a singular part, sure, but that might take one path through your value stream, whereas other parts might take different paths and some machines may be skipped. So what does that mean? Well, that means that certain points in your value stream, because your value stream is kind of complicated, you have multiple streams in that case you're trying to map. Because every product doesn't take the same path, some points in your value stream will see actually different levels of demand. For instance, if this path has a paint booth on it, but 60% of our product maybe doesn't get painted, but 40% does, the takt time is going to look very different on that paint booth because not all the demand goes through there, right? Only in this case, 60% of the demand would go through there. So those are the things that you have to consider too, and understand why it's not just one number. It's not useful really. Well, I'm not going to say that, but it becomes very useful to understand the takt image at key points in your process. And you should take the time to calculate that. You should take the time to understand that, hey, what's the load on this, right? And if my load is I've got to sell a product every 36 seconds, right? Or I'm selling a product every 36 seconds that this point in the value stream has to touch, right? Has to change the form, fit, or function. You go through that process and you start showing those numbers to your team, it's eye-opening. It's just like when we were talking about demand in the previous videos, where, trust me when I tell you that almost nobody has a complete picture of a thorough understanding of what the customer demand is for your value stream. I've never been in a company where somebody knows exactly and has a great understanding of the variability of their customer demand. It's the same thing when you start going into takt. right? And you start setting up your current state map, and you have process number 3, and the engineers are telling you, hey, I got 6-second cycle time on that puppy. She screams. And then you do all the math and you say, we have a process that can run at 6 seconds, but I'm only selling a product off of it every 34 seconds. And why are we staffing this thing so many shifts? Or why are we, how do we reconcile this, right? Takt image at different points in your value stream, that number is, or should, generate a bunch of conversations and open a bunch of eyes. So this is how I want you to think about this number and this concept of Takt. It's there to drive you in the direction of synchronizing your supply, your production, and your customer demand. If you can get your manufacturing, your value stream in perfect sync with a theoretical Takt number, the journey that you're taking towards that that becoming synchronous, that journey is a complete path of waste elimination, a complete path of elimination of variability, right? Think about it. If we're on this path to a synchronization between the customer and our supply, what does that mean? That means we're taking a look at a lot of things on the supply side that are causing this variability. I have huge batches. Why? I'm terrified of changeovers, and they're very hard, and they take 3 or 4 hours or a day, right? I have a huge first pass yield problem here. I have to rework 12% of what I make, and I scrap another 8% of what I make. So it's a big problem, and right, if you're in perfect synchronization with your customer, a lot of those questions start to come to light, right? If you start asking the team, hey guys, we only sell a product that runs through this machine based on our current availability and the shift model that we've defined. I'm only selling a product every 34 seconds, and it's designed to run every 6 seconds. And what's going on here? Where are these? Why do we have such a huge gap? Remember, to put this all in perspective, our first 4 videos were outside the factory, right? We're talking about customer demand, all the sources of variability in the sales channel and all of that stuff. Now we're slowly starting to come in, and we're saying to ourselves, hey, let's just calculate a Takt time. Let's put a Takt image on a couple of these, we know, super key processes. Not sure exactly how we're going to design our value stream yet, but let's just see really how much product is going through each of these areas, right? It's that we're taking that first step inside the 4 walls now of the factory. And in my mind, again, you could make arguments either way for this. I put this number, even though we don't have all the answers yet from that current state analysis, because we haven't really done a full current state analysis yet, I put this as a first step to kind of saying, okay, what's our bogey? What's our target? If we had the perfect customers, right? Ignoring all of that variability just for a second, what do we really need? What do we really need in the factory? That's that Takt time and that Takt image per process. And right after this, it becomes, all right, what do we got? What do we actually have on the floor, right? CFRA, capability, flexibility, reliability, availability, each process, understanding that variability to the extent that we can define, next video, the pacemaker, and also what is the relationship going to be between our value stream and the customer, and what is the relationship going to be between all of the different process steps that we have in our value stream, all right? That's it. Your 5-minute, your 10-minute, I don't even know how long it ended up being. Knowing me, it's probably like 20 minutes because I talk too much. That's your introduction to Takt. You know, there's a school of thought out there that Takt, and I subscribe to it, is a much, much bigger subject than just these numbers and what we talked about today. And I certainly want to get into that, and I think I might do that with one of my colleagues here. So Scott, if you're watching, you might be getting a phone call. Because this subject is really, really big. Quick couple of shout outs. Want to shout out to Josh, to Brandon, to Miles. I appreciate the interaction. If you guys have questions, you can find me info@flowcreated.com. You can go to our website, flowcreated.com. You can contact me through there. Of course, leave a comment below and do all the like and subscribe stuff if you want to do that. And remember, don't be a 5S'er. Create flow.